In this video, we are going to be looking at selection, and in particular, we're going to be looking at if statements. So just before we get into selection, let's look at the different constructs of algorithms. So the constructs of algorithms, just like the constructs of programming, there are three constructs. And the first one is sequence, and all programs have it. Sequence are the order that we write our instructions or algorithms in. We write them in order. So we start with step 1, step 2, step 3. We always start at the beginning, we work our way through our algorithms in a logical order. Then we've got selection, which is today's topic. So selection is where our programs make a choice or a decision. So do we take step 4 or do we take step 5? Is our little guy going to pick door number 1, door number 2, or door number 3? And finally, we have iteration, where we repeat a step. So remember that all algorithms have sequence. Most algorithms have selection and iteration as well. So a selection statement. So a selection statement is a statement which causes a program to make a choice and flow in a different direction. So if we think about a river will flow this way. A river is flowing. And then if there's selection, it will have a choice. Do I flow left? Do I flow right? Okay? So when we carry out instructions based on certain criteria, we can use selection. Only unlock a phone if the password is incorrect, or correct. Only unlock a phone if the password is correct. If the password is not correct, then we're not going to unlock a phone. There's two different routes that it can take. So when we use selection, one type of selection is using an if statement. So if statements are a type of selection statement which execute if a condition is true. If this statement is true, then do this. Otherwise, continue the program. If the contestant chooses door number 1, open door number 1. So I've mentioned conditions a couple of times, and let's just recap on conditions, which we've looked at in while loops as well. So a condition is a statement in a program that can either be true or false. Conditions usually compare two values. So remember these 6 comparison operators, and we've got equals to, not equals to, greater than or equal to, less than or equal to. Okay, remember our crocodiles from nursery school. Greater than. If it's greater than, it's going to eat the greater than one. Now here's an example that we're going to look at for a condition. So I've got my variable password, and I'm assigning it the value pass123. I've got a variable called attempt, and I'm assigning it the value 123 pass. So you can see that password and attempt are not equal to each other. And at the bottom, I've got a condition. And that condition can be looked at like a question. And I'm actually asking, is password equal to attempt? Is password equal to attempt? Is the value held inside password equal to the value held inside attempt? And in this situation, it's not. So that condition is actually false. That condition is false. If attempt was pass123, then that condition would be true. So conditions compare two values, and they have either a true or a false outcome. And we use these comparison operators. So let's take a look at an if-else statement in pseudocode. Now I've taken out the irrelevant details, and I'm just focusing on the structure of an if-else statement here. So we start off with if, we have condition, then instruction, we then have else, then an instruction. And let's break that down. Let's decompose that into the different parts. So if initiates a selection statement. So initiate means start. If starts a selection statement. We then have a condition. So this is a condition. It is a question that is either true or false. True or false. That can also be called Boolean. Boolean have true or false values. Bool. The condition is checked and must be true for the code below to execute. This instructional block of code to be executed if true. And it's indented. Note how it's indented. It's indented. So if this is true, then this will be executed. If this is not true, this takes into account if the condition above is false. So if this is false, then this takes into account everything else. And that means this instruction will be executed. So after the if statement, if it's true, we do this. Once this is executed, we continue to the rest of our program. If this is false, then we ignore this instruction and we go to this one. And then we continue with the rest of our program. So see how this if statement alters the flow of the program. If this is true, we go down this route. Else, we'll go down this route and continue. So let's take a look at a real example of an if-else statement in Python. So we started off with our conditions, our variables from the conditions that we had before. So I've got two variables and they're initiated. They're initiated, that means I've called them, I've named my variables. And my initiated variables are assigned values that are going to be compared in my condition. So the value is pass123 is assigned to password, and 123pass is assigned to attempt. Now let's decompose my if statement. So if initiates the selection statement. This is a condition. It is a question that is either true or false. The condition is checked and must be true for the code below to be executed. And in this case, you should be asking yourself, is this true or false? Is this true or false? The instruction indented, there's a dent. I've dented it in, it's indented. That's what it is. This is good coding practice. Indenting my code belongs to this if statement. It belongs to this if statement. And it will only execute, it will only happen if this statement is true. Or else, if it's false, it will print lock. It will print lock. So let's just take a look at that code in context. I've got my password, which is 123. I've got my attempt, which is 123pass. So these are actually false. These are false. This condition is false. This condition is false because password is not equal to attempt. So I actually would not execute this line and my phone would stay locked. And then I'd continue with the rest of my instructions. Now, it's important to remember that only the if has a condition. Only the if has a condition. Else accounts for everything else. So whatever the user enters, if it's not equal to password, we're going to go to else. And there are only two possible paths. I can either print unlock or I can print lock. So there's one condition, but there's two possible paths. Okay, we're going to go up a level and we're going to look at if-else statements with ELIF. So we use ELIF when we want to have multiple conditions. So in this example, I'm looking at lives in a video game. So I start off with a variable and that's initiated or assigned a value, and that variable is lives and I'm assigning it the value 10. So when I start this game, I have 10 lives. And I'm asking the question, if, which initiates a selection statement, if lives are less than 1. So that's my condition. I'm asking the question, are lives less than 1? Are lives less than 1? And we can answer that question. Are lives less than 1? No. Lives are not less than 1. So that is false. That is false. And I'm not going to carry out this instruction. I'm not going to carry out this instruction because this is false. So I go down the line and now I've got an ELIF statement, and this allows a second condition. It allows a second condition to be checked if the previous is false. So I ask myself again, is lives greater than or equal to 10? Is lives greater than or equal to 10? Yes. It is greater than or equal to. It is equal to 10. It is greater than or equal to because my lives is equal to 10. My lives is equal to 10. So the instructional block of code to be executed is indented. Now again, under my ELIF statement, I've indented this. And I'm going to print bonus round. And because this is true, I don't need to take into account my false statement because this else, it takes into account if it's false. Well, this was true. So I ignore this, I print bonus, and I carry on with the rest of my program. Only if and ELIF have conditions. So take a look here. If has a condition, ELIF has a condition. Else accounts for everything else. So if lives was 9, then this would be false, this would be false, and I would print carry on. And notice how there are 3 possible paths now. So we have 2 conditions, but 3 paths. So I can check this condition. If that's false, I check this condition. If that's false, I do everything else. So just to summarize what we've learned today, if statements control the flow of the program. They control the flow of the program. And we usually show an if statement with a decision symbol like that in a flowchart. It controls the flow, and it is either false or true or false, and it will be asked as a question that has a condition. So if it's false, we're going to do this. If it's true, we're going to do this. If and ELIF statements check conditions. If and ELIF statements check conditions. Check conditions. Okay? So if and ELIF statements check conditions. Okay? And our conditions are questions, and they use conditional operators like greater than or equal to. The indented code, indented, it's like there's a dent. We run it if the condition is true. And if the condition is false, then we ignore it. You can have multiple ELIF statements. You can have multiple ELIF statements. If I go back here, I can have lots of ELIF statements. Lots of ELIF statements. So I could say if lives is greater than or equal to 9, say, you just missed a bonus round. If lives are greater than or equal to 8, oh, you're way off the bonus round. If lives are greater than or equal to 1, only 1 life left. Okay, I can have lots of ELIF statements, but they need to go between my if and else statements, And then finally, for everything else, we use else. So if all my if and ELIF statements are false, then I have an else statement for everything else. Now, one thing that is really good to keep in mind during your exams, when you're reading an algorithm question, look out for the keyword if. Look out for the keyword if, because that usually indicates that you need to use an if statement or selection. And there's a decision that needs to be made or a condition that needs to be checked. If the user presses the button, then do something. If the user rolls a 6, then display you rolled a 6. So look out for the word if for any kind of decisions. And I'll leave you with our computational thinking model for breaking down and decomposing a problem. Thank you very much for listening, and I hope you found that useful.